Rachel from 7 and All, and today I'm going to be talking about the 5 books that I think every homeschool should have. And these are not curriculum, these are just books. Because yeah, you gotta have your curriculum, but you also need, you just need to have bookshelves and fill them up with awesome books and resources that you can come back to over years and years. And all of these resources are ones that have been in my family's homeschool for, in some cases, decades, plural, more than 20 years. And they have been a delight, and I really wanted to share them with you. And I want to be sure you know that this is a collab with Christie over at One Blessed Mess. So I'm going to be linking her channel and her video in the description down below so that you can see what she thinks are the 5 books that every homeschool must have. All right, the first one, and the one that really made me think that I wanted to do this video because I was just thinking about how much I love it, is The Book of Virtues by William J. Bennett. And of course, this is a very, I think, well-known, it is a classic. Probably a lot of you have this on your shelves already, so if you do, let me know in the comments below. But if you don't, you should get it, because it is awesome. This is not religious-based. This is a treasury of great moral stories. It's been around for a really long time. And basically, it just has different sections with virtues, such as friendship, responsibility, compassion, self-discipline, all sorts of different virtues, and then themed stories, which are classic stories, classic tales. There's a lot of poetry in here as well. There are some that are really funny. There are some that will probably make you cry. There are a lot of just awesome stories and tales in here. So my family had this. This is a really old book. My family had this when I was very young, and I remember sitting at the breakfast table just with my cereal and this gigantic book, just drinking this all in, reading this. And I have read so many of these stories again and again. We've had times when we're having a behavior issue with the family, and so I decided to get it out and read a particular story at lunchtime just because it seems really applicable on this particular day. So I highly recommend this. And by the way, I'm going to try to put links to all these books in the description below so that you can check them out for yourself. This is well worth it. If you have very young kids, you could start out with this one, the Children's Book of Virtues. And this one does not have all the same content. It has some of the shorter selections, and it has some pictures. So this is just better if you have more preschool, kindergarten age kids, and then you can move on to the older one when your kids are older. So there's basically 2 options for you there, and those are awesome. And the second book I have is kind of along the same lines, although definitely different and definitely in its own league. This one is How to Behave and Why, and this, I believe, was either a Christmas or a birthday present for one of my siblings because my mom has a sense of humor, that's why. How to Behave and Why by Monroe Leaf. And this is really, it's all about behavior and the reasons behind it, interaction with others. And for us in our homeschool, one of the biggest takeaways that we want to have is, how do you live well in this world? How do you live well with other people? How do you respect other people? And the big themes of this book, I think I'll go to the end where they have them all. It's all about being honest, fair, strong, and wise. So it's basically got 4 big themes. It does it in a really funny way. It has its own unique illustration style all throughout. And there's so much content in here in a just really delightful, easy, and accessible way. So it's a great way to start conversations with kids about how you treat other people, how you interact with other people. And again, this is not like a Christian book. This is just about basically interacting with others. How do you behave in society, and how do you treat people? And it's really good, really funny, great for kids. This we have not had as long as the Book of Virtues, probably, but we've had it more than 10 years, and it has become a classic and read many times on many needed situations with kids, and one well worth adding to your homeschool. Now next, I would say you need a illustrated or a picture kind of book of history, Encyclopedia of History. And there are lots of different ones you can choose from. I'm going to show you 2 that we've had for a very long time. You don't have to pick these ones specifically, but I think that these types of resources are so helpful, because even say I'm reading a historical fiction book, a read aloud that's taking place at a certain time in history, sometimes I just need to provide the kids with a little bit of extra context for that time in history. And it's so easy to just go to world history and open up a page and be like, okay, so here, let's just learn a little bit about the wider perspective. We don't need to have a whole, I'm not using this as a whole curriculum or anything like that. These actually came with Sunlight curriculum. But it's just a really easy way that with pictures, you can have a little glimpse into a time in history. And this one is going to be much more for younger kids. It's not photographs in this edition. This is all pictures, drawings, and illustrations. I think there might be a newer edition of the Usborne Book of World History, or they have some different versions now. Another really good one, but this is good for bigger kids, is the Visual History of the Modern World. This one is all for modern history, and it goes chronologically, and it's got a great glossary, which makes it easy to find specific events. This one starts around the turn of the 1900s, and then it just kind of goes through the years and you can see this is definitely for big kids. Not all the colors, but it's got photographs, it's got some of the major news articles of each year as you go through. And this has been great for when we're reading a story and we just want to get some of that context of that year, that time in history, what was going on in the world. So this is also one that just for myself, I have enjoyed sitting down and reading. It gives a great kind of picture of the highlights. I feel like highlights of history when it comes to the news of history in the 20th century is not the right word to use. The lowlights, something like that. All the bad things that happened, mainly bad, That's what we learn about in history. So we get to learn about that. But these kind of books are excellent to have as a quick way to just dive in and get a little bit more context for a certain time in history. The fourth one I want to talk about is that you need a book of poetry. You probably need more than one book of poetry, but you at least got to have one. I like anthologies that have a lot of poems by different authors, mainly because we're not actually the biggest poetry-loving people, but I think it's a really easy way to get into it is to have just a good anthology and to start kind of dipping your toes into the waters of poetry that way and get a little bit more comfortable with it. So I'll show you a couple of the books of poetry we have. This one is, of course, not an anthology of different authors. This is by Robert Louis Stevenson, A Child's Garden of Verses. Obviously, a well-known classic. There's a lot of rich stuff in there, a lot of vocabulary that you might need to explain to your kids. But that is, of course, a classic one. I like this, which is a child's anthology of poetry. It says for children, it's going to be probably a bit older children. And this one, I think it just moves through different authors, a lot of different authors. We've got short poems, longer poems, funny ones, wink and blink and a nod. So there's a lot of very, very kind of the classic poems of childhood, a lot of good ones. You see some dog-eared pages from ones that were wanted to be saved. The Village Blacksmith, that's a classic. Paul Revere's Ride. I think this is a really good book for basically all the poems the kids should know. In Flanders Field, there's a lot here. Yeah, this is a good one. It's actually been a while since I looked at this one. I'm like, man, this is a good one. It's a child's anthology of poetry, and it's got a quote by Lemony Snicket on the cover, which is pretty hilarious. I enjoy Lemony Snicket books immensely. So that's one for you. Another one, this is probably a little bit more advanced, older kids than the child's anthology of poetry. This is a treasury of poetry for young people, but this one's really beautiful. So we've got all colorful paintings and illustrations here. The poems, I would say, are a little bit more advanced and more serious. We've got Carl Sandburg, Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, Edgar Allan Poe, Walt Whitman, and Longfellow. So yeah, heavy hitters in poetry right there. I think having an anthology just makes it easy to pick up and read a poem and kind of start dipping your feet into those waters a little bit more. So those I recommend. And now, the best for last, or possibly just the most unheard of for last. This is what your homeschool needs. Lyrical Life Science. And this is a little bit cheating because it's not entirely a book. These are learning songs. And I've heard of a lot of learning song recommendations, but I've never heard of any songs that carry quite the emotional impact of Lyrical Life Science songs, for me anyways. I was introduced to these songs as a very young child, and I could still sing many of them, but I'm not going to punish you that way. These are all traditional camp songs like Oh Susanna and Yankee Doodle and those kind of tunes, that they have new lyrics that are all about different topics in science. So you can sing about the steps of the scientific method, or you could sing about deoxyribonucleic acid, DNA. You can sing about how different animals are classified. So they have, I believe, 3 volumes. I only have 2 right here for you. And so they've got a lot in those songs, so much information. I think you kind of start learning the songs, and then as time goes and you move on in science, you begin to understand more of the science. They've got the scientific method, characteristics of living things, plants. They've got a song about bird characteristics, protozoa. Protozoa is a really catchy one. So if you want your kids to sing about protozoa, get Lyrical Life Science. You won't regret it. Or you might regret it if your kids are singing about protozoa all the time, but they could sing about viruses and bacteria. Those are super catchy. But then in the actual book, they have a lot of the information, like they expand on the information in the songs. I believe that there's a worksheet text to it. So here, vascular plants to the tune of Battle Hymn of the Republic. I think you can find some of these songs on YouTube now, actually. People don't talk about Lyrical Life Science much anymore. I'm not sure if they ever did, but I think that they are awesome. I can sing so many of these songs after 20 years after learning them. And there's so much great vocabulary in here that later on, when you're doing like serious science things in high school, your kids aren't so intimidated because you're like, I know that. I sang that to the tune of Oh Susanna, or these different, old things. Home on the Range. So these are so much fun. I highly recommend these, and I hope that you enjoyed this video and got maybe a few ideas of what books you could add to your homeschool. Now answer the question for me. What book do you think every homeschool on the face of the earth should have? Answer that in the comments below, and please do give this video a like and do subscribe to our channel if you find my videos helpful and encouraging. All right, bye.